American football. It is the USA's most popular sport to watch, as millions of Americans tune into their televisions every Sunday to cheer on their favorite football team. It's a brutal game, as huge, buff, and skilled players battle their hardest by tackling, hitting, blocking, sacking, catching, throwing, and running for all 60 minutes of playing time. However, it's ironic how the foot aspect of football is shortly used in these games, but somehow they have the highest consequences in football. Meet the outcasts of American football, where in 1 second they are the hero to the team and the country, and then the next second they are the most hated player ever and become a pariah to that team. These outcasts are called place kickers, or just kickers. Now, of course, there are punters as well, and while their job is relatively important to the game, I'm going to focus more on kickers specifically in this video. The kicker has a few simple jobs during the game. 1. The kickoff at either the start of the game or after the team has scored. 2. Kick field goals and extra points, where a field goal can score 3 points and an extra point is 1 point after a touchdown for 6 points. And 3. Tackle the other players if needed. It seems pretty simple, right? Just kicking a ball through some yellow uprights. It really can be as simple as that, especially for professional kickers. But what I'm about to show you is that a kicker's problem isn't necessarily a physical problem, but more of a psychological and a mental problem. Kickers paradoxically have the most simple and the most difficult job on the football field, and it can either end up with glory or shame for the rest of your life. Let's see why being a kicker isn't as easy as it looks. American football has its roots in the mid 19th century, where at this early stage of the game, football was played with more of a kicking aspect like soccer. But one school, Harvard, didn't want to play it that way totally and wanted to play in a more rugby style with running with the ball, forward passing, and tackling. Ivy League schools soon started to catch on to this new version and started to evolve the game of American football. The basic rules of football were going through quite a rough patch at this time, but kicking still remained dominant. Before modern rules, kicking a field goal would get you 5 points, and a conversion after a touchdown or extra point would get you 4 points. The high scoring of kicking made it very significant to the game, but specialists weren't really needed at this time, as normal players such as an offensive lineman or a wide receiver could kick the ball. The point system would be regulated in 1909, so a field goal would be 3 points and an extra point would be 1 point, which is still used in today's football games. So how do these kickers actually kick the ball? Well, there have been two ways kickers attempt kicks. In both ways, there are three people involved. First, the snapper will snap or toss the ball to the holder, and the holder places the ball on the ground so the kicker can kick it square. The holder should hold it straight up with the laces facing away from the kicker. The first kicking motion kickers used back in the day was more of a straight-on approach. They would line up straight behind the ball, run to it, and kick it toe first. This approach was mostly used in early football, and it was effective, until one day a man found a different way to kick the ball. In the 60s, a Hungarian man named Pete Gogolak came to the US and played football at Cornell. Due to his European soccer roots, he adopted a new style of kicking that would change the game of kicking forever. In soccer, players tend to shoot some goals by kicking with the instep of your foot. This part is on the inside of your foot where your phalange and metatarsal bones meet. It ended up giving Pete a little more force when kicking field goals, as the ball could travel more distance. Gogolak ended up being an effective kicker for the Buffalo Bills, and other kickers seemed to catch on to what he was doing. The new style ended up working for most kickers and was soon replaced as the normal style of kicking in American football. A little before, I said that in the old days of football, there didn't have to be any specialists when it came to kicking, as used to be just anybody on the team. But when the rules of football finally became finalized and normalized, it was clear what the significance of the role is for each of the players. Offensive players only have to worry about offense, defensive players only have to worry about defense, and a new sector starts to open up. A role for the so-called specialist, obviously naming it special teams. There's even a special coach for the special teams as well. This is where we start to see the ever-mounting pressure and anxiety of being a kicker. Since kickers are now specialists, they now have specifically one job to do in the football field, and to perfect the job so you never fail. This specialization has helped kickers before, as that emphasis helped kickers perfect their job and be a very valuable player. In the NFL's history, there has been only one most valuable player kicker, which was Mark Moseley in 1982. This was most likely due to the fact that the 1982 NFL season was shortened to 9 games due to a players' strike, but Moseley made 20 of his 21 field goal attempts, which is very good as he was also an old-style kicker. His team, the Washington Redskins, would also go on to win the Super Bowl that year. Even though Moseley was nearly perfect that year, I guarantee that one missed field goal he had pissed off fans a ton. And not just the fans, but the players and coaches as well. Again, specialists have one simple job. Kickers only have to kick a ball through a goalpost. Easy 3 points. Kickers are expected to make every field goal. Most people can just lean back and relax when a kicker attempts a field goal because this is his one job, and NFL kickers are quite accurate most of the time. So it's not a huge deal when the kick is good and your team gets 3 points. Think about it like giving a report card to your parents. Some parents aren't going to care if they see straight A's on your report card because they expect you to get them. Why should they be ecstatic when you're doing the job you're supposed to be doing? It's only when they see a bad grade is when they get mad because you're expected to get good grades. Why should players, fans, and coaches care if you make a field goal or extra point when you're expected to make it every time? Just like getting bad grades, you're going to get punished if you fail to do your job. Being an NFL kicker is brutal, as if you miss, say, 2 field goals in one game, people are going to start questioning if you belong on the team. If you miss kicks consistently, you are likely going to get replaced. One example of this was in 2018 when the Minnesota Vikings drafted a rookie kicker named Daniel Carlson. The Vikings were and always have been in a rough patch with kickers, and as a Vikings fan, it is pure torture watching these kickers ruin games and even seasons with missed kicks, especially this season. But Carlson was competing against incumbent kicker Kai Forbath, who was okay, but Carlson seemed to look better and was named starter. He played the opener and was 3 for 3 in extra points and also made a field goal. He started again in his second game ever against the rival Green Bay Packers. He made his extra points as expected, but late in the second quarter he missed his first field goal from 48 yards out. This was concerning due to the importance of the game, but it was still early in the game and could easily be brushed off. The rest of regulation was a nail-biter, as the game was tied 29-29 and Packers kicker Mason Crosby missed a field goal that would have won the game. The game went to overtime, and the Vikings swiftly drove down the field, setting Carlson up for a 49-yard field goal. Carlson misses. 48 and 49 yards is very tough, but everybody started to get pissed, as NFL kickers are still expected to make those. The Vikings eventually got the ball back, drove down the field again, and set up Carlson for another field goal with 4 seconds left in the game. The ball was 35 yards out, meaning it would be much easier to make. But of course, he missed. Daniel Carlson missed 2 vital kicks, ending up in a rare tie for both the Vikings and the Packers. Everybody was pissed. I was definitely pissed as well. But what I didn't expect was that the Vikings immediately cut him from the team. I was astonished. I knew it was bad, but I never thought they would cut him just like that. I felt bad since he was only a rookie and was probably just extremely nervous. Carlson would come back, however, signing with the Raiders soon after, and is now quite a reliable kicker for them now. There are many examples of this kind of thing happening, but the Carlson example really shows you how much of a perfectionist you have to be when kicking on a football team. One missed field goal, and you can literally start to begin to see the end of you playing on that team, and in more extreme cases, never playing football again. Being an NFL kicker is ruthless, as it seems people only seem to care about you if you make 60-plus yard field goals or make game-winning kicks. Kickers can go down in a blaze of glory, like how Adam Vinatieri played 24 seasons and helped the New England Patriots win 3 Super Bowls with his game-winning kicks in 2001 and 2003. But you can also end up forever a menace to a fan base, like how Bears kicker Cody Parkey missed a game-winning field goal in the playoffs, Vikings Blair Walsh missing a game-winning chip shot in the playoffs, and of course Steve Norwood's missed game-winning kick in a Super Bowl. All of these kickers were exceptional in the league, but when it was their one moment to shine, they blew it, putting their whole careers at risk. A kicker's life in the NFL is simply brutal. When I think of kickers, it kind of makes me laugh how they even belong in such a league. This is a game where 22 huge 200 to 300 pound men hit, tackle, push, and knock each other around for 60 minutes of regulation, and all of a sudden, it comes down to a scrawny 5 foot tall, 170-pound guy to decide the fate of the game. It's ridiculous, but I think that's the beauty of this game. There really is a role for anyone in this game. I mean, just look at Tennessee Titans running back Derrick Henry. He is a 6'3", 250-pound monster that runs a 40-yard dash in 4.5 seconds. This dude is a completely ideal player and has had a monster season this year. Then you also get a player like this guy. This is Rodrigo Blankenship. He is 6'1", 180 pounds, and likes to play Legos in his free time. But don't underestimate him. He had a great year this year, and was also one of the highest point scorers in the league this year. It's amazing that these two are in the same league and play the same sport. Though the difference in physicality is steeply different between kickers and regular players, it's the psychology of the players that really shows how difficult one's role is in this game. Football is a team sport. If one person messes up their assignment, the whole play could be ruined. If one offensive lineman lets a guy go through, the quarterback will likely be sacked and the play is over. If a safety plays the wrong zone scheme, a wide receiver can get wide open and score an easy touchdown. But these players get a little more forgiveness when they make mistakes. These professional athletes are expected to do their job like kickers, but I don't see many quarterbacks getting cut for throwing 2 or 3 interceptions in one game. It may cost players a starting role, but they're still on the team. Non-specialists seem to have more leeway since their job is more complex and has more opportunities. However, it's a completely different game for kickers. Kickers don't have 4 downs and multiple opportunities to make a crucial kick. Kickers don't have to memorize a playbook. They have one chance, and one chance only, to be a hero or a villain. This is called pressure, anxiety, nervousness, uneasiness, or just simply fear. It's nearly impossible for kickers to be completely calm and collected, as even if you are calm, it does not guarantee you'll make the kick. But aside from the fear of getting benched or even getting kicked from a team, what else goes into this pressure of making kicks? The problem for kickers is that there are several factors that just makes their chances of making kicks even harder. Let's start with the on-field factors. Now, on the field, you still have many factors that can mess you up. First, your own team. You need to be absolutely perfect with the blocking, snap, hold, and kick. The snap has to be easy for your holder to manage. Your holder has to catch it correctly and place it correctly, unlike Tony Romo, where his mishandling caused the Cowboys to lose a playoff game. A holder should also make sure the laces are facing away from the kicker, so the kicker doesn't kick the laces, which is what mostly likely caused Blair Walsh's playoff kick to miss. Even if that's perfect, you still have 11 other players on the other side of the ball trying to block the kick. Now, with 2 offensive players not blocking, that leaves the offense outnumbered. However, a special teams unit would run a formation where the end blockers are angled, so the extra blockers on the defense would have to go around the blockers instead of straight through, giving the kicker just enough time to kick the ball. The defense is likely to outmaneuver the defense sometimes and is able to block a kick, but fortunately for the kicker, this is pretty hard to do. But it doesn't end there. The NFL actually made it harder for kickers in 2015 as they implemented the extra point to be placed at the 15-yard line instead of the 2-yard line. This may not seem much, but each and every yard is crucial to how kickers make field goals. The NFL expected this to add more excitement to the game, as 2-yard extra points were very easy, but it's just annoying to have a decline in making extra points now. Extra points are supposed to be easy peasy, but I see why the NFL is doing this. I agree that an extra point probably should be a little harder, but it is just so irritating to see your team have 6 points instead of 7 when kickers miss the easy 25-yard field goal. It sucks for kickers, as it just puts more strain on their mental game, for missing any extra point is just unforgivable. A kick can even be affected by the coaches on the sideline. Coaches have come up with a strategy to mess with the mind of the kicker sometimes. Teams each get 3 timeouts to use each half, so if a team has timeouts to use, they can call a timeout just before the kicker can kick the ball. This strategy is called icing the kicker, as the time between the timeout and the next play could prevent the kicker from getting their blood flowing good to get their muscles loose and ready. This strategy is slightly regulated as it is a penalty to call a timeout to ice a kicker after you had just done the same thing a timeout ago. This may help a kicker, but of course, there are more factors. How about Mother Nature? Weather and location are crucial factors when it comes to kicking. The two culprits of causing missed kicks would be wind and precipitation. At the tops of the goalposts, you will see little orange flags that show you which direction the wind is moving. This is vital, as a football is pretty light and can easily be affected by just the slightest movement of wind. You have to adjust how you will kick it whichever way the wind is blowing, and how hard it's blowing, forcing a kicker to also be a meteorologist. Wind can easily mess up kicks, but so can snow and rain as well. One thing you need to have to be successful kicking is traction with the ground. If your cleats cannot make a solid grip with the ground, you will have no stability to kick the ball straight on. The snow or rain may make the ground slippery, losing traction. It can also make the ball slippery as well, which could also affect the path and flight of the ball. Thankfully for kickers, about half of NFL stadiums are indoor or have retractable roofs, so kickers only have to worry about the weather about half the time, which is still pretty bad. There's also the factor of altitude. Time for a little physics lesson. When you are at a high altitude or height, say at the top of a mountain, air pressure is very low, making air very thin. And when you're at a lower level like sea level, air pressure is higher and air is thicker. This means when you play football, say in Denver, where the elevation is literally a mile high, it's easier for the ball to move higher and further, as there is less pressure of the air to affect the ball. This is surely a factor why Matt Prater got the NFL record for the longest field goal of 64 yards, as he was playing in Denver. However, it's interesting that the record that Prater beat was 63 yards and was kicked in New Orleans, where the elevation is literally at sea level. So maybe elevation isn't that much of a factor? It sure helps, but maybe it's not the most significant. There are many things a kicker can control while on the field, but the weather and elevation are sure two things they can never control, only making their game even harder. One of the most obvious factors would be the thousands of fans cheering you or booing you. A typical NFL game will seat around 66,000 people in a stadium, which is just insane. 66,000 people screaming, yelling, and watching you. I don't know about you, but that could be maybe distracting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic this year, slim to no fans were in attendance in the stadium, making the field absolutely quiet, which seems like it would help kickers, but some kickers actually struggle sometimes, like of course Vikings kicker Dan Bailey this year had some rough games, even with no fans in the stadium. However, kickers would probably be thinking that millions more people are watching through their televisions. Typically around 100 million people watch the Super Bowl every year, which just has to be daunting for them. I'm sure the viewers are one thing kickers can tune out, but I'm sure it has to be on their minds once in a while. So what do all these factors combine to make? A pure monster of anxiety and fear. No matter how mentally and psychologically strong a kicker could be, anxiety will always be there. It really just is a human instinct, as adrenaline and cortisol pump through your body, which is your body's signal of fear. It's an absolute rush when you make an important field goal, and an absolute tragedy when you miss it. It's an emotional roller coaster for the kicker and the teams, and it's surely one for fans, especially die-hard fans. This is where things start to get kinda scary. If the fear of losing your career wasn't enough for missing a field goal, how about some death threats to throw in there as well? Yes, this has happened. When Cody Parkey missed the double doink in the 2018 playoffs, he and his family received death threats. The constant humiliation, criticizing, and demeaning on social media was somehow not enough, and Parkey wasn't the only one. Many other kickers have received threats before, and that is absolutely terrifying for just a game. NFL kickers accept the fact that they will run into these situations on many occasions in their careers, and their only option is to stay calm and do the best they can. But one missed, and you are probably gone. The career of an NFL kicker seems to be one of two things: great or dull. Being an NFL kicker is truly a paradox, as it is somehow the easiest job in the NFL and also the hardest job in the NFL. I think it's actually safe to ask whether the job is even worth having. Obviously, kickers still make bank playing in the NFL, but the mental strain the game has on kickers is unbearable. Now, it's not that bad for most players, but it is realistic to say that your career is on the line when you constantly make mistakes as a kicker. That just doesn't really happen in most other team sports. You might get traded, replaced, or cut, but your whole career on the line is a totally different story. Daniel Carlson was quite on the cusp of losing his job forever when the Vikings cut him after just 2 games, but was able to come back, which shows some forgiveness in this league. But the Carlson example really shows you how cruel the NFL is to kickers. Carlson was an extraordinarily great kicker in college, but just 2 games later, he was gone from a team. Kickers get hardly any breaks with weather factors, coaching factors, bad snaps, bad holds, and just so many things they can't control. And one of the things kickers can control is one of the hardest things to control: the mental game. Kicking is probably 90% mental. The physical aspect really is just kicking a ball straight, but with all the consequences, jitters, adrenaline, and fear coursing through your body, it is just nearly impossible to be perfect all the time. But I absolutely admire the mental strength of NFL kickers today. A lot of them do mess up, some a lot of times, some in the most brutal of fashions, but the way they're able to handle themselves after failure is amazing. I actually fear sometimes these kickers might think about self-harm, or more extremely, suicide, but it's important to remember they are professionals. Kickers work on their mental game all the time, as they realize how significant it plays into their game. Instead of memorizing a playbook like most players, they can spend that time improving their mental and psychological strength. That strength will surely help them through the inevitable hate they will get when they miss a kick. I'm always going to be disappointed when a kicker misses a field goal, but I have to remember they're only human, merely playing a simple game.